If you are one of those militant white vegans on Twitter or on here who is constantly...
Hi everyone, so this is a response video and today we're going to be talking about some very interesting topics. Number one, the reality of vegans going after marginalized groups. Number two, what you should do if you live in a location where plant-based food is simply too expensive. Number three, how some Westerners bring up the issue of race even when it's not relevant, and anything else that comes up through the course of this video. Oh, and before we begin, I would recommend putting on headphones because there is a lot of swearing in this video. Anyway, with that cleared up, let's begin.
I'm gonna say this again, and I'm gonna say it now. If you are one of those militant white vegans on Twitter or on here who is constantly attacking indigenous people who are showing off our cultural foods and everything like that we hunt and get sustainably and we don't overhunt, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and I'm gonna need you to start fucking paying for our vegan meals then, because you don't realize how fucking expensive it is up in rural Alaska.
In the best case scenario, this TikToker is probably talking about some specific people and not vegans generally. But I want to take this opportunity to talk about this point more generally. I feel like this kind of vegan that specifically targets and goes after indigenous peoples or any other marginalized group who would die if they tried to live off of plant-based food because of its unavailability in those regions, I think that kind of vegan primarily exists in the imaginations of non-vegans. I know people constantly talk about such kinds of vegans, but I think that the issue is grossly blown out of proportion. And I think this is done mostly by people who definitely can live and thrive off of plant-based food. And they do this primarily as an excuse for their own greed of animal flesh and animal secretions and so on. I mean, where are these vegans with enough social power to harass entire ethnic groups? And where is this social power coming from, given that vegans form less than a percentage of the population? By the way, later on in this video, I will discuss how vegans are often the first ones who defend ethnic minorities and marginalized groups for eating meat when they are harassed by other non-vegans. Stick around for that, that's very interesting. Every time I have heard veganism being mentioned on Twitter or TikTok, because those are the two platforms that the TikToker mentioned, it is mostly in a very negative light. People call veganism inherently colonialist or inherently racist or whatever. Now, this is not to say that there is no vegan in the world who is racist, but that's not a problem of the vegan movement, that is a problem of society at large. Let me explain with an analogy. Let's say you walk into a classroom with 95 men and 5 women. You ask the vegans to raise their hands. The most likely result will be that there will be far more men who are raising their hands than women. Can you rationally conclude on this basis that vegans are mostly men? No, you cannot. Your result is based on the demographics of the classroom and not of the vegan community at large. Similarly, for as long as there are racists in society at large, there will be racists amongst vegans too. And this cannot be blamed on the vegan movement. And it certainly cannot be blamed on the philosophy of veganism, which is a philosophy of minimizing animal suffering as far as is possible and practicable. If you want to blame the vegan movement for being rife with racism, you'll have to provide evidence that racists are more prevalent amongst vegans than they are in society at large. To look at individual racist vegans and then say that the vegan movement has a problem of racism is incredibly poor reasoning. By the way, I know that the TikToker whom I'm responding to is not making this claim that the vegan movement has a problem of racism in general. At least they're not making that claim in this video, right? And therefore I'm not blaming them for making that claim, right? Because they're not. I'm just talking about this point more generally because I have seen people making this claim in other places, in other conversations. So I just wanted to cover that as well.
Because you don't realize how fucking expensive it is up in rural Alaska to buy goddamn fucking bread. My friend posted a picture of 9 rolls of bread that costed $70 fucking dollars. So you can imagine what all the vegan options are going to be like up there. So also, how the fuck are they going to grow their own food when it's snowing 24/7? Are you going to buy them a greenhouse? Are you going to buy them all the plants and everything? Are you going to ship everything personally to these indigenous communities, or are you just going to attack them?
Okay, so I'm sure there are some vegans out there who don't understand this point that you're explaining, but that's going to be incredibly rare. And let me tell you why. Pretty much every vegan has been asked what they would do if they were stuck on a deserted island with no plant-based food and their only option to survive was to kill an animal. What would they do then? Pretty much every vegan responds by saying, given the extreme circumstances, they might be forced to kill an animal in order to survive, but they would still be vegan. In fact, most vegans that I know would say that even if you're forced to eat the flesh of a human being in that scenario, you would still be vegan, right? That would still be justified because you were doing that for survival. And pretty much every vegan would then point out that that is no justification to kill non-human animals in our current society, where we do have the option to survive and to thrive on plant-based foods. After all, veganism means to abstain from using animal-based products as far as is possible and practicable. That last part is crucial. Now, I don't know how the situation is in rural Alaska, but I'll assume for the sake of this video, for the sake of this argument, that you're telling us the truth. So it seems like this condition that you are describing is very similar to that hypothetical deserted island that vegans are often transported to in their conversations with non-vegans. So this point that you are explaining is almost universally understood by vegans. Also, I understand that this TikToker is probably talking about some specific vegans going after some specific indigenous people, which, although extremely rare, is possible. I want to take this opportunity to talk about another point more generally. Many people seem to think that indigenous people can be exempt from the moral obligation of veganism. And when you ask them why, the best possible response is something along these lines about how some indigenous peoples live in climates that are so cold that you don't have access to plant-based food. I don't understand this obsession with race. Why is it not good enough to simply say that if you live in a condition, in a circumstance where plant-based food is too expensive, where it's not accessible, and you have to eat animal-based food in order to survive, then that's justifiable, whatever your race. Why is saying that not good enough? And the corollary to that point is, of course, that if you're living in a place where nutritious plant-based food is sufficiently available, you're not justified to eat animal-based food, regardless of your race and ethnicity. What sense does it make to say that, oh, the climate is too cold in that region, therefore this person who lives in this other region where plant-based food is available is justified to eat animal-based food? This seems like an illusion that is very quickly dispelled once you step out of the Western world, where you see that people of the same race can be living in very different circumstances. For example, myself and the average Indian American that you'll meet in the United States are simply not on the same level of wealth and income. Or one more general example, come to India and you'll see how people of the same race live such massively different lifestyles. I think some conversations, some relevant conversations about race are important, but I think we need to transcend this over-obsession that we have with race. By the way, if you're finding this video to be insightful, a sub to the channel and a like on this video would be transcendental.
Indigenous people only take what we need and we give back certain things that we have taken that we realize we may not use. We give it back to the earth and we thank the animal for, their life, for them giving us this plentiful bounty of food for us to be alive and survive.
Animals don't give us their life. They don't give their life away. They fight for it. We, human beings, take their lives away from them against their will. Again, if you're in a circumstance which forces you to kill an animal, or maybe even a human being, for the sake of survival, that may be justified. But don't try to portray it as some beautiful cultural thing, because it's not. It is a necessary evil. You're not an evil person for partaking in it if your circumstances force you, but it most definitely is not a beautiful cultural thing where the animal gives you a plentiful bounty of food. No.
Y'all don't realize that one fucking whale can feed an entire indigenous village for months on end. They're not the problem. Big corporations are. So stop attacking indigenous people just because it's so much easier than going after big companies. It's so fucking frustrating, and it's fucking racist.
Okay, about this point. Non-indigenous, non-vegans are far more likely to go after Native Americans for killing a whale and eating the whale, because non-vegans typically view different sentient beings as being of different levels of moral worth. They might view the killing of a whale as horribly immoral, but they will gladly eat a bacon sandwich that was made by the killing of a pig. Non-Chinese, non-vegans are far more likely to go after Chinese people for eating dogs, because they would view dogs as being of some very high moral worth, but a pig to be of lower moral worth. They would protest the killing of thousands of dogs in the Yulin festival, but will gladly participate in the killing of millions of chickens every day in their own country. On the other hand, while vegans won't be very happy about anyone eating any animal, we, whatever our ethnicity might be, we realize that what marginalized groups do by eating some animals is not any morally worse than what the general public does by eating some other animals. The very basis of veganism is to recognize that the killing of one animal is no morally different than the killing of another animal of the same level of sentience and the capacity to suffer. And vegans very often point this out. Perhaps the most famous example of a vegan pointing out this incredible double standard on the part of some non-vegans for going specifically after some ethnic groups for the killing of animals comes in the form of a quote from one of the most influential books on animal rights. The book is called Animal Liberation by Peter Singer, and it was written in 1975. The quote is as following, quote, "To protest about bullfighting in Spain, the eating of dogs in South Korea, or the slaughter of baby seals in Canada, while continuing to eat eggs from hens who have spent their lives crammed into cages, or veal from calves who have been deprived of their mothers, their proper diet, and the freedom to lie down with their legs extended, is like denouncing apartheid in South Africa while asking your neighbors not to sell their houses to black people." Unquote.
And especially when you guys try to compare that to slavery or the Holocaust, you are just way out of fucking line. Because there's no way in hell you can compare the genocide of 11 million fucking people and the slavery of one fucking race to eating fucking meat. There's no fucking correlation at all.
It is not the putting of meat into your mouth that is being compared to the killing of innocent human beings. It is the killing of one type of innocent sentient beings, non-human animals, that is being compared to the killing of another type of innocent sentient beings, human beings. This, you cannot make that comparison, is a strategy that was also used by British colonialists to undermine the atrocities that they committed in India. To learn more about that, click here. This is the video YouTube thinks you'll like the best. Click here to support my channel and receive exclusive benefits in return. Don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.